Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tampa. I am Candy Gale, your worship associate for the day. I'm very happy to be back in our meeting. Please recognize that the pandemic is not over. We need to be diligent and cognizant of the need for distancing and sanitizing and masking. Should the virus strike again, we will go back to more stringent rules. Jamie Rowe has a poster to help us remember what to do. Please read it carefully and sign if you agree. There's a pen and on the bottom. I've been a member here since 1993 and currently serve as president of the Board of Trustees. For more than 60 years, this community has welcomed people to be seekers on journeys of the heart. This is a community of free thinkers, seekers, believers in the possibility of compassion, and a call for the greater good to the whole world. I invite you to imagine yourself as co-creator in a better world. If you are visiting, welcome. I have 3 announcements for today. At 12 o'clock, we will place a stone for Kate Halen in the memory garden. You can see the poster and the stone during coffee hour. There's a slate out there before we will place them at noon. Second, Harmony Terrace co-housing community next door is having an open house this afternoon. They will have beets and green soup and other things, and all are welcome. The timing on that may be interesting, whether you go and come back or stay there at night. Between coffee hour and hay and going over there, it's going to be kind of a fluid thing. So, and the last thing that I want you all to know is that on December 5th at 2 o'clock, we are having a Zoom meeting. This will give everybody a chance to get home from church, and we will be considering the 2022 budget. We need you there. All right, thank you. Next is our stone ritual. When we get together, there are unspoken joys and sorrows. We know that we're heading into a week of potential challenges and obstacles. For now, I will place stones. First, a stone for our joys. Then a stone for our sorrows. And lastly, I'll place a stone for our very best intentions for the coming week. Thank you.
Good morning. Our words for chalice lighting this morning come from Nick Wilborn. We gather here today to share and give thanks, to tell stories and break bread and be together in Holy Communion. We light our chalice this morning in the spirit of thanksgiving, with love, hope, and generosity of spirit, grateful for this blessed opportunity to be together. Indeed. Thank you, Candy. As some of you know, I've been holding some small group sessions to kind of work through some of the turmoil that the church has been through in the last couple of years. And I want to announce today that there are a couple of sign-up sheets out front that you can sign up for a couple of small groups, both on December 2nd. One here in the sanctuary, that's a Thursday afternoon, and then one via Zoom that evening. So that'll give me time to get home and crank up a Zoom meeting from there for folks who would prefer not to not to meet in person, or folks who are working during the day. Those sign-up sheets, as I said, will be out there on the greeters table after the service. Limited seating, so I would urge you to sign up. And as far as the Zoom part of it is concerned, I'll get you that information at some future date. We gather on this Sabbath morn. It's entitled, folks who attended that church, I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but it's got some huge windows on one side that overlook the Mississippi River. So whenever people are beginning to nod off during a sermon, then they just kind of gaze out over the river and watch the barges going up and down. It's kind of an interesting setting. Burton Carley writes, "We gather on this Sabbath morn to worship in spirit and truth, to raise a joyful noise to the eternal mystery, to reconfirm our covenant, to seek wisdom and love, to strengthen our commitment to the common good. We come from many paths to explore that which is hidden, to consider the ways of our hearts, to confess how we have stumbled, to heal what is broken. We assemble in the effort to quicken our compassion and mercy, to deepen our understanding, to renew our courage, to remember who we are. This do we celebrate the grace and gift of life and practice our faith to the greater glory of the Spirit." Our opening hymn is number 24, "For the Beauty of the Earth," one that was one of the most popular ones I remember when I was back in RE as a youngster in the West Shore Unitarian Church near Cleveland. We'll ask you to sing quietly or hum along. Go ahead. Do you think we should rise? Let's rise, in body or in spirit. Thank you. You may be seated. Very nice. Thank you, Carol. I do very much enjoy doing stories for all ages. There's usually something for young folks and something for those of us who are not so young in each of these. This one's entitled The Frog Prince. It was written by Reverend Chris Bice, who's the minister of the Tennessee Valley UU congregation in Knoxville, Tennessee. The Frog Prince. There once was a little girl who was walking beside a creek when she happened to see a frog that looked very sad. "I wonder why that frog is so sad," she asked herself. Then she remembered a story once told by her mother about how a girl had kissed a frog and how the frog magically turned into a handsome prince. Maybe that is why the frog is so sad. No one will kiss it so that it can become a prince. She decided that she would give the frog a kiss herself. But nothing happened. There was still just a frog sitting in her hand. She set the frog back down on the ground and said, "Poor froggy, I'm sorry. I couldn't turn you into a handsome prince." The frog replied, "Oh, but you have done something far better. You have made me a happier frog." And the frog hopped off with a great big smile on his face. So if you're walking through the woods one day and happen to see a little girl picking up frogs and kissing them, don't try to stop her. She knows what she is doing. Frogs need love too. You know that. You may not be able to see the frog change into on the outside, but believe me, a little love and attention makes everyone feel like royalty on the inside. And so ends the story. A reading for meditation this morning comes from my colleague Gary Kowalski. He writes, "Each of us will be grateful this Thanksgiving in different ways, gathered in our separate families, each with our own distinct recipes, customs, and traditions. For some, we'll have pies of mince, and others of pumpkin or apple. Some will dine early, and some will sit down late to the meal, passing on the wisdom of the elders as to the question of whether the stuffing should have raisins or currants, and whether to add sage to the gravy. For such differences of opinion make us truly appreciative, realizing that as there is no one right way to celebrate the gifts of life, so there is no wrong way to share in love or friendship. But amid our diversity, let us also be united in our gratitude for a world in which there are many faiths, a nation in which there is freedom of worship, a community in which people of many backgrounds can gather in mutual care and respect. Let us all enter together into a moment of silence. And amen. Kathy? Spirit. Always stir compassion, blowing the wind, rise in the sea, move in the
Come to me, come to me.
And thank you. It is that time of year when Americans give thanks. And it has been so for about a century and a half, ever since President Lincoln designated the last Thursday in November as Thanksgiving Day, at the end of the fall harvest. Since then, we have celebrated Thanksgiving on a national basis. A very few of us may recall that President Franklin Roosevelt moved it to the third Thursday in 1939 in an effort to lengthen and hence stimulate the Christmas shopping season. Of course, as we know today, the Christmas selling season begins as soon as the back-to-school sales are over. Retailers don't much care when Thanksgiving happens. But back in 1939, the political opposition raised a ruckus over how moving Thanksgiving from the last to the third Thursday would inevitably lead to the demise of America. No surprise there. We also know that the primary role of opposing political parties is always to warn of America's demise, whatever change it is that's being promoted. Aren't you thankful for America's steadfastness and predictability? Anyway, as we were girding for war in 1941, Congress usurped the power that Roosevelt claimed to reside in the executive branch and declared by joint resolution that Thanksgiving Day would be the fourth Thursday in November. Any subsequent efforts to tinker with the Thanksgiving calendar evidently have been ignored. And so we approach Thanksgiving, one of our American secular holidays. It's the day we make a special effort to be thankful for what we have. Inevitably, Thanksgiving is soon followed by Christmas, when we worry more about what we don't have. Many of us will pause this coming week to thank God for her providence in keeping us healthy and well provisioned for another year. Others of us will remind God that we really need some help just to get by. Still others of us, confused by what is meant by a divine spirit will address a prayer to whom it may concern. Even the atheists among us have reason to be bursting with gratitude as everyone else around the table folds their hands and closes their eyes to say a blessing. The atheist can reach out and grab the coveted drumstick. We invite one another to be thankful, to express gratitude at this time of year, in the hope that that sense of gratitude will persist. Too often we slip into expressing thanks for things in our lives: comfortable homes, safe food, drugs that keep us healthy, and cable TV with high-speed internet access. All of those things come to mind. And we could name many other things that we might be thankful for, but not all of us have these things and all those others that make up for a comfortable, complacent existence. Of course, this year is different. We all have had much to worry us. Last year at this time, we were pretty much locked down. There was no vaccine just yet, but we were hopeful. Drug trials were well underway. Election results were in. Competence in government might just make a comeback. But a few people saw to it that the turmoil would persist. Nevertheless, the vaccines appeared and we got our shots, even as we continued to lose family and friends to the terrible pandemic. In the spring, things seemed to be getting better. But then the Delta struck over the summer, and we were back in serious trouble once again. Slowly, altogether too slowly, the numbers began to improve. No thanks to those who have politicized this crisis. Yet here we are. We can be thankful once again, and we can show our gratitude that our religious community can seem whole again. Again, we are able to see our friends' faces, to look into their eyes, but not too closely. Indeed, this year, this time, this place is special. I invite you right now, just for a moment, to take a look around you. Really do. Take a look around you and give thanks that so many of our friends in this community, as well as those new to the community, are with us today. Yes, this time is special. You know, I've learned that the average American consumes about 3,000 calories at Christmas, excuse me, maybe that too, Thanksgiving dinner. Of course, 1,000-calorie dinner would be more than adequate for all of us. Scientists now tell us that ingesting 3,000 calories has much more to do with wanting to sleep it off than does any tryptophan in the turkey. But keep in mind that 3,000 calorie figure is an average. Some are more, some are less, far less. That's the nature of an average. It certainly wouldn't hurt for some of us to give up a few of those calories to help those in the lower tail of the calorie distribution. After all, some of us have a little more trouble than others in finding something for which to be thankful. And many of us would feel no real pain and might even be better off if we gave some things up. As human beings, we are all in this life together. Those of us who've not had much luck in life recently, those who are perhaps feeling abandoned by the divine spirit, they need a boost of hope as well as benevolence. We who enjoy surpluses in life ought to be sharing with those who suffer shortages. May we find ways to lift our hearts in gratitude by putting down our forks and reaching out our hands. After all, as the Reverend William Sloane Coffin, one of my personal heroes, used to say, I am not my brother's keeper, I am my brother's brother. My good friend and now retired colleague, the Reverend Christine Robinson of Albuquerque, New Mexico, writes, you may have always thought that religion is primarily an affair of believing. And if you are not sure how a person goes about believing, you may have thought you were not a religious person. Rather, she argues, gratitude is primarily what religion is really all about. So practicing gratitude makes us religious. She explains that gratitude, giving thanks, is much like hope, trust, or love. All of these things are both feelings and spiritual practices. Gratitude can be boiled down to saying thank you. She writes, a young person who does not say thank you convincingly is considered spoiled. And an older person who does not have this habit is considered arrogant. Neither label is desirable. We are dependent on one another, from those who are well provisioned to those who struggle. Our human web, our congregational community, to be religious, should be frequent witness to expressions of gratitude that we bestow on one another. Thank you transcends being thankful for things. We don't always know to whom we should address our thanks for things, but showing our gratitude to one another is a spiritual practice that says we acknowledge our human connectedness. A spiritual practice is something that feeds the soul, so to speak. And our saying thanks provides a reality check on our tendency to think that we don't need others. Many people who are part of this congregation do thankless work that too many of us are oblivious to. Perhaps there are those of you who make sure you know what they've been doing, but some do not. The leaders of this congregation, officers, members of the board, committee chairs, their members, and many others contribute their time, wisdom, and labor to addressing the problems, the challenges you'll find in this and indeed in all congregations. We need to thank them, each and every one. Of course, we can go beyond the spiritual practice of verbal thanks by getting our hands a little dirty, carrying some trash, or helping out with social justice efforts. These things too can become a spiritual practice that will feed your soul. So let us begin this week of giving thanks by showing our gratitude and giving our thanks to one another. Coffee hour after the service this morning would be a good place to start. And as you will learn in a few minutes, we will have some special treats for you in that time together. It's a good time and place to be intentional about showing our gratitude for life. And let me just say that the little twinge of satisfaction that you experience in your heart as you do so, as you do express your gratitude, is a big part of what spirituality is all about. May we always be generous with our gratitude. It costs but little, yet the return is enormous. Happy Thanksgiving. May it be so, and amen. Our closing hymn, a popular one on Thanksgiving weeks, number 67. We sing now together. Find the words on the screen. Please rise in body or in spirit.
Thank you.
One of my mentors from many years ago said, if at least three things don't go wrong during a service, there's something wrong with the service. There is a harvest time ritual that has become popular in New York area UU congregations. It was invented by one of my predecessors at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Queens some years ago. And it's called cornbread and cider. The ritual in more normal times involves a blessing of cornbread and cider as symbolizing the fruits of the harvest that we are approximately at the end of. We would all together partake of a sample of each in a communal fashion so as to symbolize our collective thanks for the bounty of the fall harvest. Now, in the interest of protecting one another, we shall do this today a little differently. Readers will share some thoughts about the symbolism of cornbread and of cider. But we will wait until after the service, up at the multi-purpose building, to enjoy these delicacies when we are outdoors and can relax our precautions just a little bit. I hope that you will listen carefully to the readers and reflect on their words as you savor a little bit later the cornbread and cider after the service this morning. So will the appointed readers please come forward and join me here?
For thousands of years, people all over the world have gathered on festive occasions to share in the consuming of special foods and beverages. We find this custom in the Jewish tradition as the Passover Seder, in Christianity as communion or the Eucharist, a Greek word meaning thanksgiving. Both communities use bread and wine as symbols of the fruits of the earth, the gifts of God and nature, and commemorate particular events in their respective traditions. The Exodus in Judaism, the death and resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth in Christianity. Our American Thanksgiving holiday is another one of those combined seasonal and historical holidays when it is appropriate to celebrate and remember in a symbolic way the changing of the seasons, the bounty of nature, and the precious promise of our American traditions of freedom, tolerance, and democracy. For we, like the Hebrews and their descendants, are children of a great exodus, and like the Christians, survivors of a community dedicated to new religious and ethical ideas. So we celebrate and give thanks at this time with wine and unleavened bread, but with fresh apple cider and freshly baked cornbread. Both of these are symbolic of the fall harvest and the historic event remembered at Thanksgiving, the first Thanksgiving of the Pilgrims and their Native American benefactors, without whose help they never would have survived their first hard year on the rocky coast of Massachusetts.
So let us consider cornbread. The Native Americans taught the Pilgrims to grow corn and use it. Without corn, the Pilgrim community would have starved. And in the form of bread or meal, corn could be stored and easily shared. And so we will share it after the service this morning. When we share our fresh cornbread in anticipation of the feast to come, let us be mindful of all those whose labor, love, energy, creativity, and suffering go into the growing, distribution, and preparation of our food. Let us think of the rich earth in which grain and other foods grow, and let us resolve to protect that soil from all who would devastate it for personal profit. And let us be mindful that the small morsel we will eat in symbolic fashion may be as much as some people may get to eat this whole day long. Let us resolve to take whatever steps are necessary, privately and publicly, to end hunger in the world and in our neighborhood. May we also pledge to ourselves and to each other to do whatever we can to end all misuse of our inheritance from nature and all denigration of the inherent worth and dignity of all humankind. When we eat our small morsels of bread, let us reflect on those things for which we are thankful this year and on those with whom we are called to share our bounty, both materially and spiritually.
Now let us consider this apple cider. When we begin to enjoy this fresh, sweet cider, let us meditate on its many symbolic meanings. While we enjoy our cider, let us reflect on how good it is for friends to eat and drink together. Conviviality is requisite to human life, and to share a special beverage is one of humankind's oldest rituals. Let us also think about what we are drinking. For most of us, cider is a seasonal drink. It's an exceptional autumn treat. Many of us will not likely taste cider like this again until next fall. So try to remember the taste. Let us also consider the form of the apple. It is spherical, but flat at the poles, like the great globe herself. Its usual skin color is red, a color long associated with our primitive passions. But inside the apple is light and cool. If you cut an apple across, the seeds inside suggest a pentagram, long a mystical symbol of wholeness. And let us remember that the apple comes from a tree, a long symbol of the aspirations of humanity. Its roots search deep into the good earth, while its branches reach for the heavens. Let us think about the many uses of an apple. It is food, but its tart sweetness makes it extraordinary. It is special, an appetizer, a dessert, or a snack, yet it's as common as apples. The common things we encounter can give us our greatest pleasures. And finally, let us remember that apples were pressed for us in producing cider. They are the products not only of the earth and its bounty, but of all those who till the soil, tend the trees, pick the fruit, tend animals, live on and with the soil, toil with the vineyards, fields, and orchards. People we almost never see, but without whom we could not survive.
Thank you all. Now, happily, with gratitude for the earth, for life, for seeds, flowers, and fruit, for the labor of planting, caring for, harvesting, and preserving the gifts of nature, let us give thanks for all that sustains us in this life. Let us hold these memories in our hearts when we share cornbread and cider after we close this service. May it be so, and amen. We're, of course, doing the offertory a little bit differently. Rather than pass the plate amongst us this morning, there is a box at the rear of the sanctuary, and as you depart, you're invited to place your offering today into that box. And of course, you can make contributions online as well by going to the homepage, church homepage at uutampa.org and clicking on the donate button that you'll find there on the homepage. And now we shall extinguish the chalice. These words from Charles Howe.
May we go forth from this place thankful for the life that sustains us and renews us, and open to the grace that surrounds and surprises us. May we go forth from this place with openness and with thanksgiving. May it be so. Let us go.